It's time for a channel update. I never do these channel updates. It's been a long time. I think the last one was back when I just got 200,000 subscribers. That was a bit ago. I thought I'd make this a brief channel update and then give you a behind-the-scenes snapshot as to the process that goes into each of these videos. So you may have noticed the past few weeks I've had a really hard time maintaining my 6 videos a week schedule, which is what I've been maintaining pretty faithfully for the past few years. The reasons are manifold, but in short, things are becoming much more complex. I'm doing longer videos than I used to do. Almost every video I pump out is 30 to 45 minutes long. They're usually parts of longer series, and the production quality is starting to get higher. I'm trying to get intro sequences for the beginnings of some of these videos, and sometimes I even hire a composer to make songs for some of these series, so it's taking longer to get my videos done. Because of this, I can't guarantee that I'm going to get 6 videos out every week anymore. Instead, I'm not going to put a number on it, but basically what this new change means is that I'm going to continue to produce weekly content for the channel. Sometimes it may only be 3 videos a week. Sometimes it'll be 5, 6, or even 7 videos a week, depending on the kind of calendar that I have in front of me. This is going to give me the time I need to capture a whole lot of footage for, say, a new DLC series, or to capture all the footage necessary for a new mini-series. It's also going to give me more freedom to start exploring some of the older Fallout games. One of the reasons I haven't been doing much content on Fallout 1 and Fallout 2 or Fallout Tactics is because it's harder to get them running on my machine, so figuring out those technical problems take time away from my ability to focus on the story. Also, they're completely different environments from the Bethesda and Obsidian Fallouts, so changing my production schedule to fit those games is going to take a little bit of time. So, I don't want to freak anyone out. I'm still producing weekly content. I'm still coming down here and working every single day. It just means that I may need to take another day or so each week to put production into one video or one video series that I'll then publish, a few days after that. So you're still getting weekly content. It may not be 6 days a week. It may instead be 3 to 5 days a week, depending on the week. Thanks a bunch for understanding. I do appreciate it. And I want to share with you a bit of a behind the scenes. I'll show you what goes into producing one of my weekly videos. I try to record all the footage I need for the following week on my days off on Sunday, but this has begun to become impractical as my videos are becoming longer and much more complex. So on a day when I have no footage prepared, I start my morning with a nice cup of coffee and then pull up whatever game I'm going to be making a video about that day. In this instance, I was doing a video on Fallout 3. I'll have the Fallout 3 official strategy guide on a table to my left, and then any maps or other wikis that I use to make sure I find every secret on another monitor. I'll typically go through the dungeon or the experience by myself first, just so that I don't spoil it for myself, and then when done, I'll go back through it to find anything that I missed. Alright, with that, we have all the footage necessary in the can. Now to record the narration. I'll then import the footage into Adobe Premiere Pro. I'll then scrub through the footage and narrate what I see along the way. While exploring just south of the faded Pump Estates, we see big concrete ruins and a super mutant milling about. I often have a pretty good idea of what I want to say before I get to this point, because I'll take a lot of mental notes while shooting the footage and give myself visual cues in the footage itself. Looks like we're not alone. We see a door to the right. This is the door to administration. Opening the door, we find ourselves in a dark office space. For example, if I want to highlight something specific in the narration, I'll run my character back to the beginning of a room, re-enter it, and then focus the camera on something specific I want to talk about. When doing a Fallout 4 video, dialogue is pretty easy. Since we have a voiced sole survivor, I don't have to narrate it. It's then just a matter of making sure I edit the conversation in such a way so that there are no awkward pauses. The conversation flows naturally. But when doing a New Vegas or Fallout 3 video, since the Lone Wanderer or Courier are not voiced, I have to narrate their part.
Visitors must sign in at administration.
We find quite a few options. We can say, yeah? I'll give you a hall pass, Chrome Dome.
Sing. Lava.
Additionally, I have to chop up and arrange the dialogue options in such a way that makes sense. For example, sometimes there will be a dialogue option at the very top of the stack that gives away the plot too early. Bethesda and Obsidian will get around this by removing the other dialogue options from the tree once we've learned everything we need to know. But if I want to find out what those dialogue options are, I have to save before talking to the NPC, record one dialogue option, reload a previous save, and then go through other dialogue options until I've got them all. Once I have them captured, I can then choose the order that I want to play them back in the finished video. Then it's just a matter of getting through the whole source footage. Sometimes I'll bite off too much to chew. While playing the game, it may not have seemed like a long time, but by the time I get the footage in Premiere and start narrating it, an hour and a half may have gone by and I'm not yet done telling the story. This is why sometimes I'll have to break a quest or a side story up into multiple chapters. There we go. All right, that was an hour and 9 minutes recording a narration of this hour and 7-minute long source footage that I shot just a moment ago. Once the narration is recorded, I then open it up in Audacity to edit it. Naturally, when I'm doing my recording, I add a bunch of ums and ahs. Creeping closer, we see us. Creeping closer, we see a human skeleton hanging from a nearby metal spike. Or I'll completely garble a line and I'll have to repeat it over and over and over again until I get it right. Or if we have exceptionally low intelligence, we find an idiot option to say, ooh, shiny robot. Oh, we find an option to say, ooh, shiny robot. Or if we have exceptionally low intelligence, we find an idiot option to say, ooh. We find an option to say, ooh, shiny robot. I edit all of this out, and during this stage I'll have to sometimes re-record things that I messed up on in my initial recording. Or I might even think of something that I failed to think about when I recorded my initial narration, and this gives me an opportunity to do some quick research and to add this new thought to my narration. This may be a reference to Keith Moon. He's infamous for playing practical jokes. This may be a reference to Keith Moon. Once done, I can splice this into the primary narration file. This is probably the most tedious part of the process, since I really don't have anything interesting to look at. I'm not looking at gameplay footage, I'm just looking at these audio peaks. Coffee is key here, to prevent me from nodding off and taking a nap. Whew, okay, we condensed that down to 32 minutes. No, 31 minutes and 32 seconds. And that took us, according to my counter here, about an hour and 41 minutes to do. So now let's piece it all together in Adobe Premiere Pro and turn this into an actual video. When done, I'll export the file as a high-quality wave, and then import it into Adobe Premiere Pro. I play a lot of mental games with myself to make sure that I get stuff done in a timely manner. For example, sometimes I'll reward myself with a cigar or another cup of tea once I reach a certain milestone. The editing is tricky, but it's probably my favorite part of the process. The trick, especially when recording a dungeon crawl, is to edit it in such a way so that the viewer is able to piece together the journey, all while cutting down the length of the source footage so that the video only has the action and interesting bits. Sometimes I fail at this, but I try to do so by actually showing the door frame we're about to walk through when connecting one room to the next between cuts, for example. Dead Wastelander. We find cherry bombs in a wrecked toilet and a dead raider in another stall. Beneath his body is a copy of Pugilism Illustrated. Heading out and back to the lobby, heading out. Heading out and back to the lobby, or by speeding up and slowing down footage when I'm narrating directional cues. So if we move into the hallway and I say, first we look east and then we look west. If my camera panning wasn't fast enough with the mouse while I was recording the footage, I'll sometimes speed up or slow down that footage to match the narration. When I'm not moving very far from point to point in the same room, I tend to use hard cuts. This shows the viewer that we're still in the same room, that we're just exploring another part of that room, and that we haven't gone very far. But if, for example, I'm narrating that we're moving from one end of the complex to the other, say down a hallway or down some stairs, I'll use a crossfade between sections to give the idea that we've moved a long distance. Now, since the background sound effects and ambience are going to sound really horrible between cuts, I've got to transition between clips. For this, I like to use a constant power transition to reduce as many of the hard audio cuts as possible and to make each clip seamlessly merge into the next. When zoning from one cell to the next, for example, when zoning from the Capital Wasteland into a building or vice versa, I of course don't want the viewer to have to sit through 10 or 20 seconds of zoning, so I'll simply do a hard cut and use a dip to black transition to give the idea that we're moving from one zone to the next. Sometimes, however, even this late into the production of a video, I'll realize that I'm missing some footage. And so I'll have to pop open the game and record something quickly for the video. I'll usually exit out of my software to do so when I'm playing Fallout 4, which is much more demanding on my machine, but in this case I needed a shot from Fallout New Vegas, which is much less demanding, so I just left Premiere open in the background. Once I've got the footage I need, I can plop it into my timeline and continue on. As we near the end, I'll go and grab whatever product promotion slide I'm using. I've since changed my product promotion slides, this is the old version, and I'll dump them into tracks on top of the footage. I'll then animate them as necessary to fit the time that I have with this specific video, and then place the credits. After the narration of the video ends, I end each lore video with about 10 to 15 seconds of gameplay footage. I like this, it kind of gives the idea that the character is going back into the world. Who knows what next adventure he will be off to. And then I'll just fade out the video and audio with a crossfade. After finishing editing the video, I then have to work on the audio. Here's how I deal with audio to make the narration and the in-game sound seamless. First, I'll reduce the volume of everything in the game by 100 decibels. So I'm gonna select it all and paste my minus 100 decibels audio effect. That's gonna leave only the narration. Selves back in the lobby. Then I'm going to go into each of these gaps where I'm showing off a bit of the in-game sound by itself without narration. Then I reduce that to 0 decibels, which is me playing it at the normal volume. And a super mutant milling about. So before that, it's completely silent, just my narration. And milling about. Then when we reach it, we hear the in-game sound. About. And I do that for everything, so I'm going to do that right now. I'll do this for every part of the video where I want the game to be heard. And once done, I'll export this as a single merged WAV file. Then I open up a free tool called the Levelator by the Conversations Network. This great little tool evens out the entire audio file, making sure that there are no super quiet portions or super loud portions. It essentially makes the volume of my narration match the volume of the in-game footage. Once the Levelator does its magic, I'll input the output file back into Premiere. Mute the original narration track that I edited, because there's no need for me to narrate upon my narration, and then I will again silence everything in the game audio track to minus 100. But now we need to make all of the background ambience audible. So what I then do is I go through all of the footage that we're watching while I'm narrating and reduce the audio level to minus 15 decibels. Here we go. You can clearly hear the explosion from a grenade in the background even though I'm narrating over it. That's because I simply reduced its normal volume to negative 15 decibels.
Failure.
Oh no, Dean Dewey. So that's why I do that, so you can still feel the impact of an explosion even while I'm narrating. This makes it quiet enough so that you're still paying attention to my narration, but loud enough so that you can still hear what's going on. You can still hear the click and clack of going through an interface, or you can still hear footsteps or opening doors, or you can hear any battle that's going on in the background while I'm narrating, but it's not distracting. It's important to get audio correct, because audio, it's really the most important part of the video. Viewers are happy to forgive things like low FPS or bad editing, some bad cuts, but they're much less likely to forgive really horrible audio. If the audio doesn't sync, if a part of it is too quiet or a little bit too loud, they're much more likely to just bounce and to not finish watching the video. So pay close attention to the audio and you're gonna make your viewers much happier. Once done, it's time for music. Now, I use the official soundtrack for Fallout 3 for all of the music. So what I've done is I've gone through the entire album, which is right here. I've got it organized in my music folder. And I listened to every single song, and some songs are not suitable for the kind of videos that I do. Some of the songs are too dramatic and too action-packed. It's just like, you feel like you're in the middle of a fight the entire time, and that doesn't really work all the time. And some of the songs are just way too soft. So what I did is I looked for some of the tracks that were more moody, and I organized only those tracks into my moody folder. Elsewhere, I think I organized them as sad or brooding. Yeah, here's a folder of Fallout 4 music labeled brooding and dark. They work better for exploring a dungeon or whatever. So I've got 10 or so of these tracks, and in order to make sure every video is unique and doesn't have the exact same tracks in the same order, I randomly pick them. So sometimes I'll start at the beginning, then go to the back, hold and control, and I'll go like that. Or sometimes I'll do a pattern like these two, then go forward and do 2, and then towards the back and do 2, or whatever. Every time I do a new video, I just randomize it up a bit so that I have these selected in a different order. Then, instead of dragging each one down into the timeline and adjusting the volume and then adding a transition, here's a neat trick. Go down here and choose Add Automate to Sequence, and it does all of that for you. Click Automate to Sequence, and then you can choose the ordering. Here I've got selection order, so that's the order in which I chose them is the selection order. That helps me maintain a unique sounding soundtrack to it for every video. And then I've got transition format. I transition, the clip overlap for an audio transition is 10 seconds. So when it switches from one song to the next, you hardly ever notice because there's 10 seconds there where one track is fading out and the other is fading in, and they kind of meld together so that there's not a harsh stop to the music. So then I'll click OK. Those are added to the project in the back here. I'll drag these down to another track beneath everything, delete the ones that are not necessary because the video stops around there, then select the ones that I'm going to keep and then reduce those by 15 decibels. That way they don't overpower the entire video. Otherwise it would just be really loud music and hard to hear anything else. Then I'm going to add a gain transition at the beginning so it sort of fades in. And while exploring just south of the faded Pomp Estates, we see big concrete ruins and a super mutant. There we go. Milling about. We've got some ambiance, we've got sound effects, we've got my narration, we've got background music, and then I finished things off at the very end here by making a cut right after I finish speaking, and then I tend to bump the volume up to 0 decibels instead of reducing the volume so that the gameplay is playing at its normal volume and the music is playing at its normal volume for the last 10 or 15 seconds of the video while the credits finish rolling off the screen. Then I'll do a constant gain fade out about halfway through the part where I'm no longer narrating and try and match it up, and then a cross dissolve so that it fades to black before the video ends. Then let's play that back. What you should hear is, pardon me, my narration, everything is really low, and then my narration stops and everything ramps up a bit, and then fades out. With a brand new video. There we go. Kind of gives the impression that the lone wanderer is still out there somewhere, fighting in the wasteland. Okay, so we're gonna go. I've got my t-shirt ads at the very end there. I can now render this sucker. So we have my original narration track muted, because remember I combined them into that one levelated file there. And then everything else has been adjusted. We'll go to export, and then I choose H.264. So I'm going to rename the output file to Roosevelt instead of having the 1 in there. Use maximum render quality and render at maximum depth. And I think that's it. So then I can click Q to bring up the media encoder. It's going to be easier on my computer. I can exit out of Premiere while the encoder is processing the file. But now this is a big wait. So this is what, a 35-minute video. It's probably going to take an hour for my computer to render this file. So I'm waiting. There, the file just popped up in the encoder, so let's exit. There, now I'm just left in the encoder, and I can click process. And then we take a break. I'll usually get up and play with the kids, or have dinner, or chat with the wife, or however long it takes to render this file. And then once done, I try to sneak back as soon as possible. When done, I give the video a once-over just to make sure everything turned out okay. Looks good. And if so, I begin uploading to YouTube. For me, this process takes about double the length of the video. So I've got a 34-minute long video, and it's going to take about an hour and 20 minutes to upload it to YouTube. I use this time to put in all of the meta information, add a title, schedule it, add it to playlists. So YouTube says it's going to take an hour and 17 minutes. But the final thing I do before I go to bed is I have to create a thumbnail. And sometimes this can take up a lot of time. Let's fire up Fallout 3 to see what we can come up with. This process can take quite some time depending on whether or not I have a good idea. Sometimes I have a great idea of the kind of thumbnail that I want. Other times I don't. This is an example where I didn't really have a good idea of what I wanted. This is just a typical dungeon crawl, a bunch of super mutants inside, nothing really stood out. Now sometimes I already have an idea of what I want, but when I don't, I just toggle the free cam and run around a bit. This might work, but it's really dark. Here I thought maybe we'll show off some of the super mutant captives. They're not dead yet. It's not too gory, but then I got there and the lighting was just horrible. I thought maybe I could get a screenshot of these child skeletons on the ground, but then after looking at it, it's hard to understand the context of these without my narration. It's just a pile of bones, really. Is that going to make a good thumbnail? Is that going to attract the viewers? I don't know. It really doesn't stand out to me. Of course, the entire time I'm getting attacked by these super mutants, which is frustrating. Gotta get rid of them. Ooh, and then every now and then we get something accidental that really works. TFC1 will toggle the free cam and pause the scene, which allows me to get into just the right spot. And then SUCSM1 will reduce my camera movement speed so that I can get the precise framing that I need. I also change the camera field of view to between 20 and 30 usually, when I want to focus on the detail of an object. To do that, you just go FOV space 20 or 30. Brilliant. Okay, then I open up my trusty dusty thumbnail project. Got a lot of stuff in here from previous thumbnails I've done. Then pull in the latest screenshots we've taken. Think I like that the best. Not sure if this is the best thing to do. I'm no graphic designer, but I tend to try and change the size of some of these words to match the length of the others. So Academy had fewer letters than Roosevelt, so Academy looked smaller. So some graphic designer may correct me and say that's not the best way, but I like it. Export that sucker, and we're good to go. And there you go, the video is done, it's uploading, and now I can go have a nap. Or go to bed for the evening, who knows. So I hope you enjoyed that. Figured I'd lift the curtain a little bit so that you can see what was going on in Oxhorn's production world here. But the moral of the story is, I'm still working on content for this channel. Never fear, I'm not going anywhere. Still working 6 days a week, but just publishing videos between 3 to 5 days a week. Well, with that, I need to get to work on tomorrow's video. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you'd like to see more behind-the-scenes stuff like this. And if you like the format of this video, it's very similar to the format of my weekly show, Scotch and Smoke Rings, which airs every Thursday night at 7 o'clock p.m. Pacific time. So join me for that. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon with a brand new video.